Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at replacing the CD mechanism in this Marantz CD 63Ki Signature Edition. These mechanisms were very common in many Marantz drives of this sort of era, and also probably most of the Phillips CD players built from about 1995 onwards. So in knowing how to replace one of these is really handy. Sorry about that. Yes, as I was saying, it's very handy to know how to replace one of these because they are in a lot of CD players in this era. They do go wrong and they're not hard to replace, to be honest. There are a few things you can try to get these working before just replacing the drive, but to be honest, the drives are so cheap these days. You can pick them up on eBay for about £14, so about $18, that it's just quicker and easier to replace them, I believe. Now, I'm not saying by changing the mechanism, it's going to definitely fix your CD player if it's skipping or it's got similar issues, not reading discs, etc. But from my experience, I would say this normally fixes about 95% of CD players I get in if they've got issues like that. Right, let's get on with it. Start by removing the screws on the case. There's going to be 2 on each side and 2 on the back. This case should just lift off fairly easily. So he says. Right, let's spin this round and take a look. We're going to need to plug it in so we can eject the disc tray in order to get it out. Once it's fully out, we can just turn the machine off and then unplug it at the wall. Now, to take the tray out, you need to push the little clip in that hole to the left, and then just tray will slide out nicely. Now, there's 3 screws, 1 at the back and 1 at each of the fronts and sides. So I'm going to take these ones out. Very slowly. I should have sped this up, shouldn't I? I've really got to sort out my video editing skills. Yeah. Maybe go and get a cup of tea and I might have finished the time you're back. Right, finally. And now we're going to take out the connectors. There's 1 at the front here. You just squeeze them and pull them up gently. And there's 1 ribbon cable. And another connector at the back, which again, just squeeze and gently wiggle up. Once they're all 3, it should just lift out nicely. And that is the transport with the mechanism inside. So now we've got it on the bench. You can see basically we need to take the actual laser mechanism out from this transport. So we're going to unravel that wire, which is just around a little clip there. And now the mechanism will just gently slide out of these rails and pull up. But before we do it, which I nearly forget here, there's a ribbon cable underneath that goes into the board. So let's just slide it back in, turn it over, and we can gently remove that ribbon cable. But it's a bit hard to get to. So what I'll actually do is I'll undo these 2 screws, remove the board, and then it should come through a little easier. I'm just trying to do the screwdriver as slowly as possible to make this video as boring as possible. I've never seen anything so slow. Right, so now just lift the little metal plate up. It's on a little plastic clip you can just see. Wiggle it free. The board now will lift up slightly, and you need to remove this cable, which you can do by gently just pulling on it. But I'm just going to spend about 20 seconds just doing nothing. And now I'll do it. There is a little tab here, which you're meant to pull up, but they don't always often work very well. And it does come out without actually pulling that tab up. Just got to be very gentle with it. Right, so let's turn it over gently now. Hold it all together. And the mechanism should just slide out now. Of course, it's going to get caught on something. And yeah, now we've got the mech out. Now the mech itself is held in with these 4 sort of vibration dampening grommets. As I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of quick things you can try before changing this mechanism over. You can clean these little rails that the laser slides up and down on. They sometimes become like gunked up in dried grease, and it can stop the laser sort of sliding smoothly across the mechanism. Also try and clean the lens, which is an obvious one. And just check this spindle motor sort of is free and is rotating nicely. And always whack a little drop of oil in there to free it up. It sometimes works, but again, I just like to change these out because it's just so much easier. And you know everything's going to be fine then. All right, let's get taking these rubber grommets off then. Just get a little prying tool and you just push down on them slightly and at the same time sort of outwards. Slide out, but you should be very gentle with them because obviously any rubber that's this age can split and it's going to be quite fragile. So just gently, that's why I take my time doing it. They'll just slide out and the mech becomes free. Now I'll get my replacement mechanism, which I purchased off eBay. As I said, this is about £14. There's quite a few sellers that do them, and they're all fairly similar. I think this one's the VAM 12.2, which is basically just the later version of the CDM 12.1 and 12.2. They're all very similar, just with very minor revisions. If you look at them side by side, the old and the new one, you'll see there are a few differences. The size of the motor on the new one is definitely smaller. It's a bit more compact. Possibly the circuit boards are slightly different as well, but yeah, it's basically the same thing. So let's get mounting it onto our old bracket. I'm not going to bore you with about 2 minutes worth of me slowly trying to pry it all back together. So it's basically just a reverse of how you took them off. The little rubber grommets just slide into the gaps of the mechanism and it slides onto the plastic bracket. And then we're just going to feed the wire through the gap here. Gently, because these wires are very fragile. If you break one, you're screwed. Then there's some little tiny clips on the side that they'll clip round in. We're going to put this board back on, which we took off again earlier. Everything's the exact reversal of before. Screw it back on. I've sped it up a bit now, so again, it's not as boring to watch. Remember to slide that ribbon cable in very gently. And then we're just going to relocate it into the player, line up the holes, and screw it back down. And this is where I panic, and I can't remember where I put the screws, and then realise they're literally right in front of me on my white magnetic board. So I edit all that out. And yeah, let's put the screws back in, one at the back, one on each side again. At the front. Then we need to reconnect the cables. This wire's a lot longer on the replacement for some reason. The original one was probably half a length, so I'm just going to try and find a little cable tie or something just to tie it up a bit because it's flapping everywhere. Not quite sure why the replacements are so much longer. Maybe it's just for compatibility because, like I say, these drives can be used in a lot of different CD players, and I guess the distance required may be further in some drives. Just going to tuck it underneath that ribbon cable, smarten it up a bit. And now we're going to just gently slide it back down into the grooves. That's it, and it'll just click down into place, and then put the tray back in. The tray will literally just slide straight in. Just gently position it in and then slide straight to the back. And now for the moment of truth. This will be very embarrassing if it doesn't work. Plugged it back in. Let's try disking it. And hopefully it'll be as good as new. Yay, loaded up nice and quick, which it definitely wasn't doing before. It was taking several seconds to find the TOC. And it seems to be playing the first track nicely, no skipping. Again, it was skipping all over the place, even after I'd cleaned the lens. And I'd done the other things I mentioned earlier. It wasn't making any difference. Yeah, this has definitely fixed it. Another classic CD player brought back from the dead. Until next time, see you later.